political season and the various aspirants are traversing the country campaigning for your votes. Now, we have seen several promises so far touching on the state of business, the state of the economy, taxation, amongst other issues. Now, with SMEs being the backbone of Kenya's economy, employing over 70% of Kenya's workforce, and with many still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, what does this election year hold? As a small business owner, what are your expectations of the aspirants as they set out to crystallize their manifestos? What would you want them to address at both national and county levels? Good afternoon. This is Business Now, the highlights. What is the economic agenda for aspirants ahead of the general election? What issues would the SME sector like addressed by the various political outfits? And in our Made in Kenya segment, it's mango season, and we take you to the Kalamba fruit processing plant in Makueni County. And we're asking this question of you, so you can send us a text message. The number is 22422, or you can also send us a tweet at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. What are your expectations as a business owner? What do you want addressed by all of the campaigners that are coming around to a town or city near you? We're looking forward to that. And indeed, we will be speaking here in studio to Victor Otieno from Vifa Consult, who's actually done a survey on this, speaking to various business owners. What do they want at both national and county level? And also we've got Tony Watima, who's an economist, to take us through what that would mean at both a micro and a macro level. When somebody says they're supporting SMEs, what do you need to see in terms of tangible numbers, efforts, proposals? What would it mean? So that and much more, including your views. And remember also, we're taking a pulse of business owners around the country, as we do here on Business Now. So we'll be taking a look at what business owners have to say across the country. Here in Nairobi, we'll have our Patrick Igunza, who will be joining live. Martin Munene will be joining us from Nyeri. Francis Mtalaki from Mombasa. And John Wanyama, who will be joining us from Eldoret, speaking to business persons there as well. But first, let's take a quick look at the news making headlines this afternoon in the world of business. And I'd like us to begin with Kenya's stance against the use of cryptocurrencies. That remains unchanged. The Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge says the regulator will be talking more about the use of such products in the near future. CBK has issued circulars to local lenders warning them against dealing with cryptocurrency. And the Capital Markets Authority, CMA, has encouraged firms to engage in transactions that yield investor confidence. Speaking during the release of the 21st edition of the Soundness Report, CMA CEO Wycliffe Shamia says they can leverage on the existing capital markets asset-backed securities regulations to achieve the same. And finally, index manager FTSE Russell announced that Airtel Africa PLC will be joining the FTSE 100 today through its mobile telecoms and mobile money services. Airtel Africa PLC is serving over 122 million people across the 14 African markets in which it operates. The group floated on the London Stock Exchange in June of 2019. Right, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about politics and business, and it's the campaign season, and many of them have quite a bit to say about what they will do for the economy and for SMEs in particular. So let's talk about this a little bit with my guests here in studio, Victor Otieno and Tony Watima. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program this afternoon. Victor, let me start with you because you recently put out that survey speaking to various SMEs on their evaluation of what's being said on the political platforms. This is the one moment, they get to meet. So what were the findings? Give us an overview of that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yvonne, and thank you for having me. So traditionally, Kenya, the way politicians look at the electorate, they of course, look at them from the bastion point of view in terms of tribe and in terms of geographical location. So what we wanted to explore was to see an avenue in terms of looking at the electorate from a business point of view. And of course, this is based on the sheer number of SMEs that currently are in Kenya. Last data that we have is we have around 7.4 million SMEs. So if you were to look at that as a block, then probably you'd want to satisfy the needs that they want. So we did a survey around the same, just talking to small businesses, asking them what kind of issues that they would want to be addressed by whichever coalition or whichever political party that is going to be in government, both at the national as well as the local government. And the issues that we are looking at the sectors that they feel that should be addressed, some of the concern that around business environment that needs to be addressed at a national level, as well as county level, and trying to see how can we be able to strengthen the link between policy as well as action. So what we've seen is, of course, we have Vision 2030, we have the different NTPs, but usually the translation to action sometimes is a challenge. So how can maybe private sector be reorganized to ensure that policies are actually implemented? And of course, we got very interesting insights. SMEs were saying at the county level they would want to have a meeting with the governor or the ministers through the different associations. This, of course, is reflected at a national level. Can we have round tables? If you see the current structure of round tables are within national associations, sometimes the voice of the mwananchi doesn't get through. So if we can be able to have round tables with the respective governors as well as president, have more needs assessment survey done. If you notice, up to date, we are still using 2016 MSME data. So, and this is what informs policy, informs action. So can we be able to have regular, updates in terms of surveys so that we can get a real pulse of what is actually in the MSME space? Of course, this would have a direct bearing in terms of the policy being able to address some of the emerging challenges that SMEs face.
Yeah, and we'll come back and also talk about some of the specific issues that they've said they wanted addressed. Tony, there's a few things that Victor has said. One, policy to action, and two, I guess having the face-to-face. That sounds like a typical political question. I think whether you're an SME or not, many people saying we don't get to have sort of a one-on-one with our leaders. But let's talk about, from an economic standpoint, what I think needs to happen at a macro level before we get down to specifics.
Okay, thank you for having me. I think the main thing is that is trying to put to context where we are as an economy. So we've had almost 2 years of adverse effects of COVID. And the adverse effects means that we have lost jobs, we have lost income, the economy generally has shrunk. There's a contraction. And the economy, the private sector side has taken the heaviest hit. And so there is a lot of reduced activity of private sector within the economy. And so when we move forward about how do we come out of this, and this is coming at the period of elections, politicians will come with various arrangements on what the plans that they need to do. So the context is that the next government will be, what is the project that you want to do in terms of economic recovery from the standpoint of where we are. The problem we have is unemployment, incomes and productivity, which is prior to a dire situation before COVID.
Yes.
So that context is, no matter what we say, there is access to capital you're providing, there is what you're providing, all those things that have been promised. All that needs to be put in context. Does it reflect a recovery plan of the economy?
Okay, all right, recovery plan. We'll come and talk about what a possible recovery plan could look and sound like, because once that happens, then it helps the SME sector and those in the private sector as well. But what do others across the country feel? John Wanyama is joining us live from Eldoret, speaking to traders there. John, who are you with, and what are their specific needs for those at both county and national level?
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm with a guy here who is doing business to do with best here, and we have talked to him, just telling us what is he doing about his cakes and all pastry that he's doing here. And maybe if we can talk to him, how are you, sir? Happy New Year. Good to see you. What are your expectations now that politicians are at it again, just promising Kenyans that this is what we'll be doing? What is your area of interest?
Okay, my name is Peter. I'm a pastry chef, and this time I'm expecting a lot from the politician, because most of the time they come to normal mwananchi, they say they will do 1, 2, 3, but at the end of the day they are not performing. So this time we are going to elect the leaders according to their scorecard. Second, we also want the government to look the problem facing the youth, especially the issue of unemployment. They look at the issue of loans, the issue of tax to the youth. If it's a graduate who may be graduated recently, and you know very well 75% of the graduate in Kenya, they don't get jobs. I want to see the leaders when they are coming to ground. What are they telling the youth? What are they going to benefit the youth? And let them tell the youth the fact, what they are going to help the youth. And also, in terms of things have the price has gone a bit high to a normal mwananchi. You get that, like the flour, the sugar, it has gone at a high price. I want to see the leaders promising the normal mwananchi. How are they going to handle such an issue? It's not the issue about 6,000, it's not about the issue of billions. We want the real issue to a normal mwananchi.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. Because of time, Yvonne, I have a beautiful lady here. She's also a salonist. What is your name, madam? What do you do? Na unasema kwamba unaishi na ulemavu. Pengine viongozi hawa wanapokuja uongozini watakapochaguliwa, ni wapi ambapo ungependa wao waangazie zaidi?
Asante kwa kunikaribisha hapa. Kwa majina naitwa Lilian. Nafanya kazi hapo 64 Arcade kwa niaba ya watu kama sisi. Ombi langu ninaomba tu watupunguzie license, especially kama sisi tunaweza enda mahali tuulizwe kama IDs, no, tunafaa kupewa lise matibabu na tuna hizo IDs. So kwa niaba yangu kwenye wako kwa ulemavu kama sisi, tunaomba hizo IDs. Na kwa wakubwa wetu mahali mnatusikia, consider about sisi kama ulemavu. Na kuhusu hiyo biashara, saizi biashara imepanda juu sana kwa vitu mingi. Just and explain. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yvonne, as you heard from those two, they are saying, because of time we would have loved to talk to more, but they are saying that they want the government, at least those who are coming to be in the government, at least whatever they promise, as usual, they are now outside there promising heaven as they usually do it, but they are saying at the moment they get to the power, they rarely do whatever they promise. Most of them who have talked to in Wasingishu, also Yvonne, they are saying they want the tax, especially the licenses from the county government, to ensure that the governor who will be coming in to ensure they lower the prices or the money they will be paying for those licenses. Most of the governors or leaders, they promise they will lower those licenses, but once they come in the leadership, they also attempt to raise that licenses, among many others. From this side, Yvonne, back to your studio.
Thank you, John Wanyama. County licensing fees, and we'll talk about that because it seems like there's, sort of double taxation, especially if you're doing cross-county business, if you're in Nairobi. Okay, so let's go to our Patrick Igunza, who's live here in Nairobi, and we'll be getting to him in just a moment. County licensing is one of those. In fact, I don't know if you've had a chance to see Farmers' Choice Circular that they've sent to pig farmers, where they're talking about KRA asking them to pay cess in Nairobi, regardless of whether cess has been paid for those products at source. And we once had a business lady here was in the business of making potato crisps, who said they're getting potatoes from Nyahururu, but they pay cess for every county boundary they pass their potatoes through by the time it gets to Nairobi now for processing at that point. So one of those things. this came up, Victor?
Of course. At county level, of course, there are various issues that were raised, harassment by county officers, etc. But of course, taxation became a mainstay. Of course, it's a very complex question around taxation. There is the question of cost, but there is also the question of processes. How easily can you be able to apply for a license, as well as cost in terms of relations between one county to the next. The easiest example is CES, where if you're transporting your agricultural products or quarry materials across county, it has to be levied across the different counties, but also the formulas changes from one county to the next. So there has to be some level of harmonization where now you pay this once. So of course it's not one governor to address that. There has to be some level of harmonization, standardization across the counties, so that we become competitive both internally as well as externally.
Right. I'll come back to you, Tony, in just a moment. Let me get to Patrick Igunza, who's at a car yard. That's person selling cars. What are their views, Patrick? Patrick, can you hear me? All right, we seem to be having a challenge with Patrick Igunza's sound. We will get back to him in a moment. Interesting to hear what he has to say. Tony, you were nodding your head about, sort of a harmonization of a lot of these things. And we hear things like the ease of doing business, being touted a lot.
Actually, that's where the point I was coming at. And one of the critiques that we made about the ease of doing business before the actual scandal came up is that it's quite elitist, that it looks at the formalization of businesses and at the top large corporations. The ease of doing business doesn't collect much, or the much of information used to price that, to weight that index, doesn't collect a lot of information from the local SME sector. So that's how you find that ease of doing business might be going down for a country, but traders within that, the local traders within that economy, will tell you that the cost of doing business has gone high. And so that was the irony about it. And many economists questioned the framework on how it is done. And that's the problem also we have generally with the economic policy in Kenya, that people within Treasury, especially the main intervention is budget policy, is that they look at things from an ivory tower, and not the nitty-gritty of today's needs of local traders and Kenyan population in general. So they tend to miss those kind of information when they try to plan the economy, especially with the interventions of budget policy statement. So in terms of sales, I think there was a point the Council of Governors had a meeting about harmonization and all that. But I think it's a collective duty that we should have had an intergovernmental issue to handle that in terms of facilitating trade within the intra-counties.
Absolutely, yeah. And doing trade in Kenya, it seems to be difficult to do trade within the borders. Yes. And that's an interesting concern. Let's try Patrick Igunza once more, who's taking a look at those who are in the business of selling used cars. Patrick?
Thank you very much indeed. As you rightly put it, Yvonne, we've seen politicians actually traversing various parts of the country, promising Kenyans various issues as far as their election bids are concerned. But then again, whether these ideas are actually being bought by the electorate is a question that will be answered appropriately come the next general election. Right now we are hitting the streets of Nairobi to find out what various businessmen and women are actually expecting from those campaigning. Yes, they've been promised a number of issues, but is it what they want from these people seeking elected positions? Right now I'm here at Al Shuja Motors, dealers in second-hand cars, and I will be speaking to one of the ladies here by the name Florence, so that she can tell us, given an opportunity, Florence, to speak or address some of the people who want to be elected, both national level and county level. As a car dealer, what would you expect of them?
my first expectation is to make the cars available to everyone and affordable to everyone. By this I mean most people would really desire to buy cars, but the rates that are given by the bank are quite high. So I'd urge them to reduce either the rates and also to cut off some of the bureaucratic procedures involved in acquiring the asset finance. So that is one. Secondly, I'd request the government to make spare parts available for each and every unit that they allowed us to import from Japan and make them cheaper as well. Thirdly, reduce the duty, of course. It's quite a big hiccup because once the duty is high, the cars also become very expensive. And fourthly, can they reduce the years from 8 years to around 5 to 6 years so that the cars are cheap and everyone can afford?
All right.
Yes.
If you have a candidate who can actually sustainably address those issues that you've raised, they will have won your vote.
Yeah, definitely, because this is where I get my income from. So yeah, it will be a leeway for me to make more money, create employment for me and so many other people. And people will be driving cars every other day of their choices and affordable ones, yes.
Thank you very much indeed, Florence. Let's see how that will play out. Yvonne, back to you. When you come back to me, I will be speaking to someone different in a different area of operation.
Thank you, Patrick. I have a feeling I know where you're going next. But we'll get to that in a moment. Listen, Tony, everyone is talking about reduced cess, reduced duty, reduced taxes. But then again, this is the main source of revenue for a government to run its operations. Where is the balance between, reducing all of these, cess, taxes, all the types of taxes, versus now having a government that runs? Because then most of the political aspirants will come and say, okay, we'll reduce this, we'll reduce this, we'll reduce everything, but then they will still be starved of cash.
I think to be truthful is that anyone who will promise to reduce all those things is lying. And so it will not happen. And the reason is that, first, we pay more than 45% of our revenue collection to debt obligations first. Another almost half. Another 35% to 40%, I think it's clocking 40%, goes to salaries and remuneration in public sector. So we lose around 80% in all those things, which is a government obligation every day. So you remain with 20% of running government, which is not enough. And so for a period of time, we've mismanaged our economy that we've borrowed to sustain a government on recurrent expenditure despite development. And so when Kenyans might ask for those kind of incentives, the economy itself cannot afford to. And so anyone telling that will be lying. The problem is that we mismanaged our economy, that we got to a point where we were not supposed to be today. And so one of the problems that we have, we might talk about big numbers in terms of growth, but we're not having an economy that is creating jobs, an economy that is raising incomes, an economy that is creating more wealth. And so everyone complains about those need to reduce those things because their income levels have not changed according to the growth of the economy.
So what is realistic as a request from anyone out there? So we're saying reduction of taxes, not feasible.
Yes.
So what is that one thing SMEs can be asking of political aspirants? We've said reducing taxes, not going to happen.
Yes.
Not workable.
Yes.
So what is that one thing we're asking?
I think the main intervention that that Kenyans should look at from the next government is that the current position where the economy is doing badly. And so we look at from an input to output position. We need to have much input in the economy so that to have bigger output. And that was the intervention that we thought we will see within the COVID effects, trying to cushion SMEs. The loss that the economy took is not the kind of intervention government made, and that's why we still continue to struggle. The next government has to find a way that you're able to reallocate your priorities. One of the main things would be like renegotiating terms of debt and reducing the burden of debt. If you get a 10% leeway, then you're able to pump that 10% within the economy, and especially to SMEs, so that you have a bigger output growth. A bigger output growth will mean job creations and levels of income will increase. Okay. So what Kenyans are asking when you say that we need to reduce those things, the reverse is that we need to find a way that the economy grows, so that we don't ask government for that. Because the issue is that the economy might be growing with those big numbers that we mentioned, but their incomes are not
growing in tandem.
Exactly.
Okay. And so they would be able to afford, whatever taxes. Yes.
Maybe I just wanted to take a different tangent around taxes. Of course, I agree with Tony in terms of the taxes are not going to come down, but there's a level of loss of revenue due to corruption. The process is not being very clear.
Great, yeah.
So I think one of the areas that aspirants or whoever who's going to be there can do is based on the foundational reforms that have taken place. Yes, of course, they're not far-reaching, but we at least have ease of doing business. We have the e-citizen at the very least. Can we be able to use ICT to improve our processes so that you can just pay your taxes, whether they're expensive or not, efficiently through M-Pesa, for instance? That already can save me costs in terms of opportunity cost, and probably can be able to assist me do my business better as we look at reducing taxes in the future.
Okay, and we'll come back and talk about a little bit more, because you've mentioned corruption and the ease of doing that, but there's also the proverbial access to capital, market opportunities. But when we say access to market opportunities, what are we asking the person who says, I want to be your president? That means what? So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, also to take a look, like we said, we are speaking to many around the country on just what this means and what their expectations are. So as we continue with this discussion, I'd like us to cross over now to Nyeri County, where Martin Munene is at the Mudavadi market in Nyeri, and is engaging traders on what they would like to see prioritized by leaders who are seeking elective office in August this year. Martin?
All right, good afternoon to you, Yvonne. Like you said, I am at the Mudavadi market, and as you can see, I am at a shop where they sell wares to the traders around here, and I want us to have an engagement with one of the traders here to understand exactly what they would like to see. Nataka uniambie unaitwa nani na unieleze labda biashara imekuaje, na tunajua ni mwaka wa siasa. Labda ni masuala gani ambayo ungetaka kuona ikitiliwa mkazo na wanasiasa?
Kwa majina naitwa Emma Wangui kutoka hapa Mudavadi Market. Kama ni county government yetu, ningependa waturudishie license. Huwa tunalipa per day 15 bob, na tangu corona ikuje biashara zimekuwa chini. So tunaweza penda waturudishie at least hiyo 5 bob tu tukilipa 10 bob per day. Na kama ni national government, venye wao wanapea wanafunzi bursaries, pia si wanaweza kuwa akitupea loans. Kama tunarudisha tunalipa na interest ya 1%. Na kama sio hivyo pia wanaweza kuwa akitupea bure. Angalau tuweze kuboost biashara zetu.
Labda vile wanasiasa wanaendelea kuzunguka huku nchini, wanazungumzia masuala mbalimbali. Labda unaona ni kama wanaangalia vile nyinyi mngetaka, ama ungetaka kusikia wakibadilisha jinsi wanavyoahidi wakazi?
Mimi kama mkazi ningependa mwanasiasa akikuja aniulize shida zenye niko nazo kama mwanabiashara. Nikimueleza sasa anaweza enda aweze kuniambia suluhu ya hiyo shida yenye niko nayo, anipe suluhu. Lakini si aseme kama hajui shida yenye niko nayo. Kama hii soko yetu tunaweza kuwa tuko na shida ya uongozi, lakini mwanasiasa anaenda anasema shida yenye tuko nayo ni ya license. Kwanza akuje aniulize, then aende anipe solution.
Asante. All right, Yvonne, as we hear this trader saying, one of the things that they would like to hear is about access to credit, but also they would like to be able to pay lesser for licenses. And remember, most of the small traders, especially in the counties, deal with the county governments, and the county governments are tasked with the responsibility of actually offering or licensing them. And she says they pay about 15 shillings in a day, but for a small-scale trader, they feel, especially the post-COVID-19 era, it would be wise or prudent if whoever is actually campaigning to actually lower the price. But also an interesting perspective being that it is important that they speak to the traders, they speak to the small-scale trader wherever they are across the country, so that they're able to tailor-make the problem or solutions rather for the problems that the traders are facing across the country. Back to you in studio from Nyeri County, I'm Martin Munene.
Thank you, Martin, for that. Formalization, we'll get to that in a moment because I know that's a big one. I just want to carry on with your point, Victor, and you were talking about some of the other issues that need to be addressed, particularly at county level. So you talked about corruption and, easing things like paying for your licenses, if it can be a one-stop shop that says, okay, this is what it is. So traders are not spending too much time
Exactly.
going from this office to this office, national to county. But talk to us about some of the other issues. Access to market is such a big thing.
Yeah, so it is. And if you look at the size of your small business person, they cannot be able to afford to do feasibility studies. So can the county maybe, for example, take the role of, being able to map different opportunities that, of course, then the SME can be able to access those kind of, information and make better decisions in terms of their business. That's number one. What also stood out was the issue around health. So what happens with a lot of business people is whenever they get an accident or face an issue around health, they pay by cash. So that means that, that's cash flow from the business that is going towards healthcare. So healthcare then became an issue that can we be able to have an affordable healthcare model where I don't have to pay cash. This, of course, combined with some social protection of sorts. When I retire or in case anything happens to me, I don't have a safety net. So it's my business that has to bear that. So it becomes a fear that a lot of entrepreneurs that we are talking to, at least at the county level, that were concerned over.
Yeah, and that's interesting because healthcare is an issue that everybody faces. But I imagine for the small traders, when you fall sick, not only is it a cash flow issue, but chances are, you're out of work. And when you're out of work, it means your business is closed and, you're therefore unable to conduct your business and carry on. Access to infrastructure, that was also something? Yeah,
access to infrastructure, depending with the county. Of course, our survey was focused on, I think, 4 or 5 counties. So, of course, if you were to look at Nairobi, then it's not an issue as such. But as you go towards rural counties, then access to infrastructure becomes an issue. Access to worksite. So, there is always this cat and mouse game that, you have between entrepreneurs as well with Kanjo's quoted quotes. Where can we be able to have designated worksites that we can always come to? Of course, now combine that with water and electricity and other amenities that they would require for them to produce. We always talk about issues around, counterfeit goods. Without proper infrastructure, then even if I have the head knowledge and I don't have supporting equipment, then of course then I would continue to struggle. And if you look at the size of the business, if someone who's doing turnover of 50,000 a month and they're producing shoes, of course, and if they're doing it by hand, then of course consistency in terms of quality cannot be achieved. So of course these are functions that possibly, of course, county government in liaison with the national government can be able to look at in terms of availing infrastructure, equipment, water, electricity, for us to be able to produce the quality that we need.
All right. Tony, you spoke about an economic recovery plan that would, of course, help SMEs. It would help everybody, but it would certainly help SMEs as well. What does an economic recovery plan look like in some practical terms? Okay, so before I answer that, let me say just something that needs to be clarified in terms of the complaints about county governments. There is a problem we have within the knowledge around counties, how it should work. Ideally, counties were devolved governments, and devolved governments in terms of devolving service delivery. Now, we went back, especially Treasury and the control of budget, gives counties targets of revenue. And so counties work on meeting revenue targets instead of looking for funds for service delivery. So you find that they burden the local traders just to attain those target revenues, which ideally was not the envisioned plan of counties. It was just service delivery being devolved, and counties will be having independent devolved functions that they can deliver according to the demands of that area. And so we try to reverse that, and which is the problem that we have, that we see people get levied a lot of taxes within counties. So to your question, I think an economic recovery, what we will see from this period in time, is what almost the Kibaki government came in 2003 to 2007. A job creation and wealth recovery plan. And we've seen within these COVID effects that people have lost almost 2 million people have lost jobs. In terms of business, you look at the Fin Access survey of 2021 that was released in December, sampled business people say half of them say they've lost customers. That is their main challenge. And then the next is capital. And that
from an economic point of view, says that the demand side of the economy is shrinking. So people don't have money to buy goods and services for traders and everyone to be able to supply them within the economy. So the starting point will be, what is the intervention that we need to create a demand side that people are able to attract and have money to buy goods and services.
Right.
From there, then traders, suppliers, and people who are in business have the incentive now to deliver that back.
Absolutely.
So if we don't have that intervention, even if we were to give capital, as many people talk about today, accessing capital,
and
you might take the
goods,
loan, but where do you take those goods to?
Yeah, because the people do not have the spending capacity to
yes,
buy
and then you find yourself with goods, and then you need to pay your loan.
Right.
You have not sold your goods, and you caught in that problem. So the government intervention, that the economic recovery plan should be coming from that side. And when you intervene from the demand side, then you're able to create jobs and create wealth and increased productivity.
Okay, understood. That's such an important point, creating the demand side. You can have all of these goods, but if your customers do not have the capacity, then you're stuck with dead stock, in a manner of speaking. Shall we go back to Patrick Igunza once more? I bet I know where he is. Can we put money on where Igunza is going to next? Of course, yeah, okay. We should put him on another show that's not around lunchtime. Igunza, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Yvonne, once again, from Matters Cars to Matters Food. Right now, I'm here at Kenyeji's store. And we want to talk to Miss Mary, the founder and head at Kenyeji's store. She basically deals in authentic traditional foods. And she also says that she expects a number of things from those seeking different elective positions. Let's talk to her and get to hear exactly what is it that she expects from these candidates campaigning every now and then. Hello, Miss Mary.
Hello, Patrick.
Once again, pleasure meeting you.
Same here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How have you been?
Good, thanks.
Business?
Business, we are growing. Yeah, and we thank God.
And we can see the political temperatures are already rising.
Yes.
The big question is, if someone would actually come to you and seek your vote, as a businesswoman in the line of operation that you are in, what is it that you expect from them?
Actually, we are looking at a conducive environment for us to run business. Number one, we have so many licenses that we take to run our businesses, of which I feel some of them are just ridiculous. I mean, if they can all be narrowed to one license that can take care of everything. You know, you find yourself going back and forth for this, back and forth for that, which we really don't mind being compliant, but narrow it down, make it easier for us business people to be able to focus and prosper. Yes.
Okay, what else?
Availability of resources in terms of finances. You know, like I know a lot of youths that would really want to be in business, but it's really hard for people to break that space into that space. There are so many limitations, there's so many conditions, and then it becomes very hard for us to actually access financing to be able to, let's say, grow our businesses. So you find yourself probably limited in one space because you can't move that much, you can't be able to get money, that kind of thing. Yes.
Okay, that's it?
Yes.
All right.
I think those are the things that I'm really looking at, and we are really hoping that this election will go well, because most of the time during election time businesses do struggle, and like for us now, we are really trying to see what we can do, because we are a bit worried, to be very honest, because we are not sure what will happen, and we are hoping that things will go well, so that after elections we'll still continue being in business, because there's a lot of uncertainty. We are not sure about what will happen, but we keep praying that things go well.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you too.
And there you have it, Yvonne. Whether traders dealing in cars or dealing in food, a number of things are actually common. One, finances, and two, conducive business environments. It is up to the politicians now to take note of those issues that have been raised, and let's see how it will play out come the next general election. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Patrick. And please, 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 this time bring us something. You can't be doing these assignments and unakula peke yako. Patrick Igunza there for us. Harmonization of the tax regime. Okay, that's interesting. And it's something we've been talking about on the show. This is Business Now. We want to take a short break. There is plenty more to come. I have more of your views on Twitter. I see your tweets on the same. I'll be reading them out. But don't forget, we're not done just yet. We've been to Eldoret, we've been to Nyeri, Nairobi, Mombasa is next. Francis Mtalaki will be joining us even as we continue with our guests in studio. And don't forget, our Made in Kenya segment is definitely one you want to watch. That's all coming up after this very short break. We'll be right back. So little time, so much to talk about with this particular discussion. So we're talking about business and politics. It's the election year. In under 7 months, about 6.5, we'll all be going to the polls, and the campaigns have already begun, and there have been promises of what they will do, particularly for those in business. We've been speaking to business people around the country, including my guests, Victor Otieno and Tony Watima. Victor, your final words on what it is a trader will be saying, okay, so this is what I want, so that when they see an aspirant saying, tutafanya, tutaleta, tutatenga, you know, they have all those catchphrases. But what should SMEs be seeking out in all of these aspirants at both levels?
I think fundamentally we should look, of course, because we don't have fiscal space for, you know, tax breaks, etc. I think just looking at improving of processes, of legal, you know, compliance processes, both at a national as well as at a county level. Number two is, of course, we have your traditional access to finance, access to markets, etc. If you can be able to you know, have information around available markets for both you know, at a national level as well as county level, so that SMEs can just know, you know, instead of write-offs of setting up a car wash business, they have an opportunity to be able to look at different models that they can adopt. I think the whole issue around you know, around health has to be looked at, because it has a direct bearing on the cash flow of SMEs. So I think generally those are the major issues that SMEs should be looking at. But I think maybe just to point to the issue around economic recovery, what we've seen the trend in Africa as well as globally is a shift towards ICT or innovation, startup-enabled innovation. So we've seen Tunisia, Senegal, I think Rwanda also enact a startup bill. So what that means is that you're creating an enabling environment for venture capital investors to put money in Kenya. So that's a low-hanging fruit that we can use without actually you know, allocating resources. Okay. So can we be able to create an enabling environment? It's one of those bills that is currently in Parliament, but of course other bills might take precedence. But I think if it doesn't pass this year, then probably next year that should be a priority for the next regime.
Okay. Tony?
Okay, it's a good thing that Victor mentioned about a taxation issue. I think what Kenyans should look at is a candidate with a tax policy. And a tax policy in the sense that a policy should give a direction on what that government within the next 5 years will be focusing on. So tax incentives are going to which sectors and what is their direction to the economy. And we never see that in the Kenyan election. So even the current setup we have is just tax collection in order to meet government obligations. Yes. Yeah, and that's interesting. And you said the same as well for county governments. Yes.
That they're in a rush to meet deadlines as opposed to focusing on service delivery. Well, it looks like our Francis Mtalaki from Mombasa will have the final word with the business owners that he's speaking to there. Francis?
Yes, Yvonne, indeed, we are here at one of the areas, small business areas that sells cars here in Mombasa County. And I want to bring in one of the businessmen here. Labda tueleze majina yako, alafu kama SME, unatarajia nini kwa uongozi unaokuja hususan siasa zinapoendelea?
Asante sana Bwana Mtalaki. Naitwa Mutungu wa Mbua, mkazi wa Mvita na mfanyi biashara hapa Mvita, sekta ya magari. Tunaomba sana uongozi unaokuja 2022 August uwe uongozi ambao unazingatia sana kusaidia SMEs pale chini, sababu sisi ndizo tuna move the economy. Unaona kama wanageuza sheria every day, unasikia taxes zimeongezwa, unasikia wamezuia importation of used parts. Ule mwanabiashara ambaye ameleta container ya used parts hapa coast na alikuwa anataka kupeleka bara, anaingia hasara. Unakuta ule mfanyabiashara, kwa mfano Farmers Choice. Wamesema sasa price za vitu zao kama sausages taenda maradufu. Kwa sababu gani? Wameongezewa tax. Wakulima wadogo wa kuku nini wameshindwa kufanya biashara ya ukulima wa kufuga kuku kwa sababu chakula ya kuku imepanda gali sana.
Kwa sekta ya magari hususan nini?
Kwa sekta ya magari unasikia kila siku tunaambiwa Mombasa mara sheria imegeuzwa saa hizi, ile number plate tulikuwa tunatumia KG tumeambiwa tena tumekuwa revoked, all our licenses tumekuwa revoked. Unakuta mtu sasa mpaka urudi tena reapply for new licenses. Unakuta business is becoming very difficult to do here in Kenya. Why? Because wale SME wa chini ndio wanavyogewa, lakini walio juu mabwenyenye waliotafuta pesa 1982 au wanaendelea kuwa rich and becoming more richer when the gap between the poor and the rich is increasing every day.
Asante sana. Acha tumpate mwenzako ambaye pia ni mfanya biashara. Your name and tell us maybe as a businessman, what do you need the political card to address in the upcoming general elections?
My name is Mohammed Samata. I'm actually the biggest employer in Vita. Some of the issues are employment, and we know very well that the port has moved, and we can see the economy of Mvita is actually dying. So one of the things that needs to be addressed by the aspirants that are coming in is what are they going to do about this? Will they need to bring back the port? Secondly, we also have issues like rates, reduce of rates, especially on CBOs. Licensing fees need to be waived for CBOs and groups and youth groups. We also need the reduction of Fuliza rates. We know very well that these rates are very high and nobody is addressing them. We need the next presidential aspirants to address that they reduce Fuliza rates and lending rates because the youth are being affected. We are also requesting to know what happened to the blue economy money. We know the president allocated money for the blue economy. What we know right now is that the current wavuvis wanakuwa harassed. Instead of being given nets and boats to do their work. So these are issues that need to be addressed by coming aspirants, because I mean we want our aspirants to address issues that are there and bring solutions to them. We know very well school bursaries are a problem. We want waiver. We want, because of Corona, we want complete waiver of fees for students and governments to either to waive it completely or to come in with a backup for bursary for this.
In terms of tourism, maybe anything?
We know tourism is not doing well, and right now we have advisories for security. We want this addressed. We want better marketing. I mean, if you see marketing in London tube stations, it's Rwanda they are marketing. Rwanda doesn't have a sea. It doesn't have beaches. We need to do better marketing for our tourism, and we are not seeing that.
Many thanks. There are some of the businessmen here in Mombasa operating and saying that they need various aspirants to address a number of issues, the port of Mombasa and also the economy of this region. That also depends on the tourism sector and the foreign policy. Yvonne.
Francis Mtalaki from Mombasa, thank you very much for that. Some very robust submissions from the business owners there. So